Hey everyone, what I've got here is an FLSUN Prusa I3 style 3D printer. Thought I'd go over a quick little review about it. I've owned the printer now for probably about, 4 months, maybe 3 or 4 months. Made a couple of changes from the original layout, suggested layout for the manual, and have had a couple of little hurdles with it, but so far it is working fairly well for a entry-level, roughly $200 3D printer. Excuse the mess over here. The desk right now is undergoing a little purging. Let's go with that. But anyways, the focus on is the printer. As you can see, it is running right now. Why the FLSUN model? Well, it's one of the least expensive that I could find with the build plate of its size, with an all aluminum frame. The entire frame is 2020 extruded aluminum. Gives a nice solid frame base. They're even put together, the angles are aluminum as well. Everything bolts up solid, so there's no... In factory configuration, it's pretty dang solid, I must say. Very few plastic parts on it. There's a couple, like the caps up here on the top, are injection molded, and the side braces here are actually a plexiglass, I guess you want to call it. Acrylic. Yeah, I think it's acrylic is what it is, actually. And then obviously some braces that hold the rods are all injection molded. Aside from that, well, there's actually acrylic braces down here for the motors, stepper motors. They're acrylic as well. Everything else, as far as the components in here, are 3D printed for the printer itself. Over here, the head itself is a 3D, well, not the head, but the mount for it is 3D printed as well. Oh, and the Bowden, Alden, however you want to pronounce it, extruder mount is also injection molded. Aside from that, it's all aluminum metal framed, and surprisingly, quality feels pretty well. As you can probably hear, there are some vibrations that I'm chasing down, trying to stop the annoying rattles, but once you get over that, it's actually a pretty good printer for the price. Some things on here that are not original factory that came with it. There's some, as you build it per the manual, these threaded rods are literally just free floating up here in the top. There's nothing to keep them from wobbling side to side, which could give you, some alignment issues. Well, maybe not, because these rods right here are actually what the assembly slides up and down on. The threaded rods are literally just to move these keepers up and down on that rod, but I didn't like the fact that they were just kind of free floating there, so I did on Thingiverse source some little keepers that take a little 608 bearing and go in there and keeps it nice and sturdy. There's a left and a right, obviously. I'll put a link in the description to the Thingiverse post about those if you happen to have one of these FLSUN printers. That way you could download them and print them yourself. But in my opinion, that's one of the most awesome things about 3D printers is if it's lacking a feature, 9 times out of 10 you can print it for the printer, and literally it upgrades itself. You might notice as well the power switch holder that I have back here. Factory, the way it comes is a 2-wire plug, just a single 2-wire plug for your mains coming from the wall to the power supply back there. I wasn't too happy with that, so one of the first things I did was put a 3-wire with a ground, so at least the unit was grounded. But then I also got tired of unplugging it from the wall every time I didn't want to use it, and plugging it back in when I did want to use it. So simple little, actually what I bought was this whole plate on top screws in, and I already had, it just takes a normal, like a power supply plug for a computer or PC, and plugs into that. Then it gives you a switch, and you're just switching one of your mains on and off. That way you can turn it off without unplugging it, which is rather nice. And I also used it to print this little nifty little tool rack, also Thingiverse find. That way I can store a lot of my Allen keys that I use with it, scissors for cutting the tape that I use for it, some pliers, some tools that I use to pry things off the build plate, and of course X-Acto knife for doing some cleanup. A little flashlight over there, that way mid-print I can always give a little shine and check on see how it's going. Have a little doodads in there, SD card, little small .04 drill bit for cleaning out tips, so on and so forth. Just stuff that's handy to have with it. One of my own designs for the thing is a simple little spool holder to hold the filament off to the side right underneath the extruder, or the motor for the extruder rather, which is actually what I'm printing right now. I'm going to put a second one up here on top just to hold my roll of tape, because I get tired of digging down here and getting the tape out every time I need to replace it, which if you're careful isn't often, but using blue painter's tape with this PTEG filament that I'm using right now, it sticks. PETG sticks it's amazingly well to blue painter's tape, and it gets ripped up every once in a while trying to remove your prints from it. So it's great because your builds never come off the bed, but at the same time you go through the tape pretty quick, depending on the print. If it's a small surface area, you can get it off pretty easy. This I should be able to pry off without damaging the tape. Some of the other things I've been printing recently have a pretty large footprint, and they've pretty much been destroying the tape as they're removed, which ain't a big deal. It's a lot cheaper to replace the tape than it is to replace the whole build plate. I haven't yet upgraded to a glass one, but that is in the future. I would like to put a different bed on it and put a glass, which I guess I could put a glass plate on this bed really, but haven't ventured too much into that. Wow, it is freaking pouring outside. I didn't even notice that. I looked outside and it is absolutely pouring. Anyways, one of the other things I printed was this board to actually house the control components, which is kind of hard to see because, well, it's absolutely covered in control components. Sort of see the back of it there, I guess. And it's just bolted straight to the frame. And I also have a little standoff that I designed and made to hold an 80mm fan. It's blowing right on the heat sinks for the stepper motor drivers, because those do get pretty toasty, so it's always good to keep your stepper motor drivers nice and cool. And the last modification I really did was, you can see the relay that's back there. What that's doing is actually a direct connection to the 12-volt power supply, and the relay kicks on and off when the control board tells it to heat the bed up. That way the full draw of the heated bed isn't going through the control board, it's going through that relay that's hooked directly to 12 volt. So a little less stress on the control board, puts that load, that electrical load on the relay itself. So maybe that should prolong the life of this board. The board is pretty basic with it, but it works great for me. I haven't had any issues with it. The only issue I've had with this printer was my own fault during assembly. I accidentally flipped these this drive belt around backwards, so when I fired it up, went this way when it's supposed to go this way, but that was a quick and easy fix. The other issue I had was tension on this Bowden, however you want to pronounce it, extruder. For a while I was literally tightening this jam nut down, this wing nut, to where there was no gap right here. It was just pinched together, and it was squeezing the filament way too hard and actually deforming the filament. And what that was doing, since it was squishing it, was causing it to be really thin once it came out up here after it was pushed through, and it weakened it to the point where it didn't seem to matter what change I made to a setting as far as temperature or speed or anything else. The filament was bending and actually just bowing out right here between where it's squeezed together and where it gets up in here into this tube. And it took me a stupid amount of time to figure out that I just had the tension set way too tight. I tried cranking temperature up, thinking maybe it just wasn't melting fast enough in the head and the tip. I slowed it down, thinking that maybe I'm trying to push it through too fast. In the end, relieving a little tension, I'm now printing at a maximum of 60 millimeters a second with this PETG at 250 degrees, and it's working flawlessly. It has not bowed out again since. These do have a heated beds, these FLSUNs, so obviously ABS is a possibility. I haven't got into ABS yet. I've only done PLA and PETG since I've owned it, and I definitely prefer the PETG. It's about twice the price roughly of the roll, but you get some of the benefits of the ABS, the higher heat temperature resistant, but it's a lot easier, a lot more forgiving to print than ABS. You just got to be able to support the temperatures. Like I said, I'm printing at 250 on the head, 80 on the bed. Some say you don't have to go that high on the bed. I read 60 is good on the bed for PETG, but 80 seems to work pretty good for me. Everything seems to stick really nice, and I haven't had an issue yet printing at 80. Maybe I'm shortening the life of my heated bed. I don't know. But it's working, so I'm not going to change it. For this PETG, that is. PLA, I had issues warping with PLA, because a lot of people say you don't need to heat the bed. I found that once I did start heating the bed to 50 degrees or so, 50, 55, it wouldn't warp. For instance, this right here, since it's so long, were I to print this in PLA and not heat the bed, or this PET for that matter, and not heat the bed, the ends would be curling like crazy. But since I've got it heated up to 80 degrees, I mean, those ends are absolutely flat, not lifting at all. It's working perfect, and that's at 80 degree bed temp. So yeah, that's I guess that's the FLSUN in a nutshell. It's your average Prusa I3 style printer. Oh, I did mention the build sides. These are 200 by 200 by 200 millimeters, which was one of the reasons I opted for this printer, was the larger build size. I have yet to use all of that real estate, but it's nice to have the option there, as far as being able to print something larger. Let's see, what else can I say about it? It's cheap. It's an entry level. The head on it is a cheap little, Chinese knockoff style head. If you do purchase one, first recommendation I will give you, is buy some new nozzles. The original one I tried printing with was giving me very inconsistent results. I changed the nozzle to another 0.4 millimeter, 0.04, whatever it is, and since then, print quality has been vastly better. So they're a couple of bucks. You can buy a set off eBay in the US, shipped to your door, and that's for, I think I got like 4 of them. So it's definitely worth an investment on those. Stepper motor drivers, it's one of those things that when it goes out, the whole printer's down. They're not that expensive to get you a set of them. I think I bought a set of 4 new ones, or 5 new ones I think it was, with heat sinks for like 10 bucks. So it's good to have a set of those on hand. Probably one of the best things you can get you when you have any DIY printer like this, that especially get to put it together. Small organization box. You get some stepper motor drivers, some nozzles, bunch of extra nuts and bolts, some extra wires, little springy doodads, extra cables for different configurations, with the ribbon cables here that go between the screen and I don't know why my flash just turned off, that was weird. They go between the screen and the control board, excuse me, and the brain fart. But another upgrade. I wish my flash hadn't turned off, because another upgrade that here we go, I got a flashlight in my handy dandy little tray over here. Another upgrade, highly recommended here. When I purchased mine, it didn't come with the blower motor on the back that is used to cool the print. So I had to purchase one of those. Not that big of a deal. I think I paid like $5 for it, and shipped here in the US again, and showed up at my door in a couple of days. But the blower literally just shoots air just right down onto the print, which, it gets the job done. It's not very controlled though. So there is a Thingiverse download that I can also link in the description, that is basically an air duct and what it's doing is ducting that air from that blower motor hanging off the back of it down into these little arms. And on the left and the right, there's a little outlet for air on either side that directs the air straight down onto the print nozzle. So it gives you good cooling as you're printing to cool the filament quickly as it lays down, so you don't have any issues, and comes out with a better quality. So I printed for a little bit without that cooling fan at all, and it did okay, but I noticed print quality, especially around the edges, stepped up once I added that fan, and even more so when I added that nozzle to it. But I guess that's the FLSUN in a nutshell. For, you know, a little over $200 and printing off some upgrades with, you know, by itself, printing some upgrades for it. It is really a pretty dang good printer for an entry-level 3D printer. If you're looking to get into it and don't want to spend a whole lot, don't know if it's something you'll actually get into and like a lot or whatever, but I got mine. I originally got into it for a project. I was building something and couldn't find a small little air duct to go from a 120 millimeter PC case fan to another size, and I was stumbled across 3 printers, thought they would be way out of my price range, what I could afford, stumbled across some like these and thought, hey, I can do this and I can use it for so much more. And haven't printed, the only useful thing I've really printed is a little product for my wife who has cystic fibrosis, and it's used for her medication. I've actually, believe it or not, got some sales on those, so even though you got a cheap little printer, it could make you some money on the side, you know. I wouldn't quit your day job, but not if you own one anyways. You might need to own 3 or 4 to really get an income coming with one, but a single one could give you some extra cash in your pocket if you're willing to dive into that world. Let's just say the printer's only paid for half itself so far off the products that it's made. So, like I said, you're not going to get rich off of just owning one, but, you know, the option's there. But aside from that, a lot of it's just knickknacks. The wife's huge into rubber ducky figurines. It's one of her collection things, so I printed off some goofy little ducks that I found on Thingiverse. And aside from that, some other little things here and around the house, but this FLSUN is really a great printer for the price. That's about all I can say about it. So if you're on the fence about it, I would definitely say pull the trigger. I mean, just think about, you know, the couple of things I look for when deciding on your first 3D printer. Build plate area, or build area size, I should say, which the FLSUN i3 is 200 by 200 by 200. Heated bed, which this model does have a full aluminum heated bed. And the frame type, this one's all extruded aluminum, so it's a little more sturdy. Really, I guess that's about it. Aside from there, they're all pretty similar. They all use basic, as far as this price range, all use very basic stepper motor drivers. Same basic layout with your flat frame and upright. Same basic, not the same control board, but the same basic controls anyways, where you get the screen, the selection knob, so on and so forth. But the FLSUN has done me extremely well. I'm very happy with the purchase. Couldn't be happier. It is a put-it-together-yourself model, which I personally love. That was one of the reasons I bought it as well. I wanted to put it together. I'd enjoy it, because one thing about it, you put something like this together, when something goes wrong or breaks, you can do your own troubleshooting and your own repairs. You're not relying on customer service in China to tell you that you need to buy a new one or whatever, or some stupid thing like that, or some guy that's just going to read from a book because he doesn't even know what you're looking at. So I enjoy that aspect of it myself, putting it together. So, but that's it.